Welcome to the channel. My name is Brandon. This is Born Again XJW, and today I have an exciting interview for you guys. The person I'm going to be interviewing today, her name is Mariah. She is new to the YouTube scene, but not new to the TikTok scene. So she's taking an interesting angle on activism. I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I really hope that you guys will go and support her channel. So I'm going to go ahead and post a link down in the description below, so you can check out her channel. You know, just again, feed the algorithm and show as much support as you can to former Jehovah's Witnesses who are speaking out against the organization. So again, it was a fun conversation today. I hope that someone gets something out of this because I certainly enjoyed hearing her story. So I just want to thank you guys for being here, and we're going to go ahead and get into the interview right now.
Truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God.
All right, we are live. So I wanted to thank you guys for coming to the channel, and I would like to introduce Mariah. I actually discovered her through YouTube, and I found a lot of her videos very interesting and compelling, and I thought she had a neat story to share. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I guess you could call it your testimony, sort of like your life story. So I always start everyone off with the same question, and it's like, how did you enter the religion of the, well, I hate calling it a religion, but how did you enter the organization of the Jehovah's Witnesses? And just kind of give us, you know, your breakdown of your early life.
Okay, yeah. So technically I was born into it. My dad and mom, when they were engaged, they were forced by her Jehovah Witness mother to get baptized in order for them to get married. So they raised my sister and I as Jehovah's Witnesses, but we weren't very active until I was about 15 years old. And then I ended up being like, I guess, two really good pioneer girls in the cult ended up befriending me. And that's kind of how I, as an adult, kind of jumped into it.
Okay, very good. So you're similar to me. I was born in as well. So
Okay.
you would be a second generation. I was a third generation. So
Yeah.
well, I don't know, because you said it was your grandmother, right? That got your
Yep.
parents. Okay. All right. So you are third generation.
Yeah.
All right. So a lot of time learning their language, getting their baggage, and basically, you know, getting a worldview based off of all of their teachings. So that's pretty interesting. Would you say that in your childhood, was there any things that stuck out to you, like when you were growing up, like little red flags, maybe that this wasn't the truth that they were claiming it was?
Yes, there's actually a lot, and it took me longer than I would like to admit to fully put everything together. But my very first time I remember knowing that God or Jehovah was not a part of the congregation. My father, when he was a child, he was abused by his mother and stepfather. His mother is also a Jehovah's Witness. So when him and his siblings got older and they were all a part of the congregation, they went to the elders to tell what happened to them when they were young because their stepfather was a ministerial servant.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much the elders sided with the abusive stepfather. And I remember I was little when this happened, but that was kind of like a big thing for me, being like, this is not inspired by God. Like, he would not let that happen. And then, of course, that was kind of when my dad went inactive too. So I kind of saw I understood his side and reasoning on that.
Right. So how old were you when that happened?
Oh, goodness. I was probably like 12, maybe 13.
Okay. All right. So you were at least at an age where you can start conceptualizing right from wrong. You can see the hypocrisy in actions. Like, you know, this doesn't line up with anything that we read about Jesus when he's talking about requiring mercy and not sacrifice.
Yes.
So you were at that age where that was pretty apparent to you. So that was like the first red flag. What would you say your life was like as like a typical JW child?
Oh, this is funny. I was actually just talking with another girl who left the cult as well, and I was just telling her the story. But I remember pretending I was happy. Like, I remember genuinely saying out loud, I am so happy. I had a purpose, and I think that's why I thought I was happy, because I was doing something that I thought was good. But I remember being miserable. Like, every day I would be corrected on something because, whether it would be like my clothes just fit me different than it did another girl, even if I was wearing something that covered me more, just because of how my body was built, to them pulling me in the back rooms because I like said an opinion that they didn't like at like a car group out in service.
Yeah.
So I just remember being kind of harassed on a daily basis, because I pioneered and went out in service from a young age. So I remember always being like attacked, or like constantly being told I was doing something wrong and never understanding what I was doing wrong.
Yeah. I noticed that trend quite a bit, especially when it comes to younger or teenage girls in the organization. They were constantly, of course, being pulled into the back. It almost always had something to do with their dress,
Yeah.
like too much cleavage or too short of a skirt or something like that, which I always really felt like that was more of an indictment on the men that were doing the pulling into the back room. And when I say that, what I mean is like, how kind of sick or gross do you have to be where you can't get a hold of yourself? And obviously it didn't happen to every young girl or teenager, but I did know some girls growing up who were, let's just say, a little bit differently shaped or something like that. And that was like a constant struggle that they found themselves in that back room. And it was almost always about dress and grooming.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. I always thought it was so sick that these 40 and 50-year-old men were coming to 12-year-old girls and telling them that they're being too sexual. Like, I very much remember feeling grossed out back then when they would say those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the fact that you can't look at someone that age and just like, that's a no-go zone. But for them, no, it's totally acceptable. You're tempting me. So it's remarkable. So what would you say made you start to, I know you already gave the example with your father, but what would you say were, because I listened to some of your stories on YouTube, and I know you're sort of taking the TikTok route and then moving some of those things over YouTube Shorts, which I think is kind of interesting. It's like a new thing I'm seeing going on. Actually, can I go off on a side trail here and just ask you, what kind of response do you get on TikTok?
I feel like I get a really good response from people on TikTok. I get a lot of, not technically ex-members, but people who are like, oh, I had a friend growing up who was a Jehovah's Witness, who reach out. But the only thing with TikTok is they limit like what your comments can be. So you can only do like 50 words in a comment. So it's very hard to have real good long conversations with people. So I've noticed I get a lot of people being like, oh my gosh, that makes sense because my friend at school who was a Jehovah's Witness did that. But it's not as maybe good dialogue as YouTube, where we get to have full conversations and make points. So it's good on TikTok, but it's definitely not as in-depth.
Okay. So it's a little bit harder to engage. Like you can like give them your side of the story, but it's harder for them to sort of respond back because of the low character count.
Yes.
Okay.
But you can make video replies, which is kind of nice.
Okay.
So if there's like a point that I keep hearing from a lot of people, I'll do a video response where I just make a whole video responding to that comment. But sometimes, I don't know, I feel like that's still a little bit of, I don't know, too much work for one response.
Right. Okay. And now when you shifted that content over from TikTok to YouTube, how did the change in medium like affect the comment section?
Okay, it was actually really drastic. My first like couple of videos that I had done on YouTube, I just was getting hate, like Jehovah's Witnesses coming on and just being horrible. But as I kept uploading videos and getting some more which I don't have a lot, but more subscribers, I was like getting good support, and it kind of made me realize how many people do see how horrible the Jehovah's Witness cult is, but I've just never heard it because I haven't had, I guess, the platform or avenue to speak to so many people who've been affected by it. So it was really kind of touching to see so many people sticking up for my side of it.
Yeah. Well, something I've really noticed about YouTube, specifically when I'm looking at other XJW advocates or activists on YouTube, is when they're in their like starting phase. That is when the attack hits hardest. It's almost like people want to squash it before it grows into anything. So these Jehovah's Witnesses who are not supposed to be on YouTube commenting on these apostate websites, they are in the comment section and they are just like spitting venom at you because they want you to go away and they want to discourage you.
Yep.
And like you said, as that community starts to grow, and your subscriber count grows up and you get more and more of a community, you start to find people who, like you said, either have family members who are Jehovah's Witnesses, are formerly, or in some way they've had Jehovah's Witnesses affect their lives, or I should say the organization has affected their lives. So they're very supportive of you speaking out against it, which I think more people should speak out against it. It's incredibly evil.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm sorry to go off on the side trail, but I was interested about the whole TikTok thing. So now bringing it back to some more moments that woke you up, and I know you gave the example of your father, but you had a couple of things happen to you, and like I said, I've been watching some of your videos, but do you want to sort of start us off on the things that really started to wake you up and turn you away from that false way of thinking?
Yeah, so I had a couple big things that happened while I was in still, and then a couple while I was out. So I can go over kind of all those if you have enough time.
Absolutely. Let's go for
Okay,
it.
so when I was in, I started noticing that, I guess I need to kind of paraphrase with this. So I live in Bend, Oregon, which at the time, I don't know if it is now, but at the time it was the highest per capita ratio of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I believe it was every 1 to 3 people. Bend has grown now, so I know that is a completely different number on that. But at the time, my city or my town that I was in was almost majority Jehovah's Witnesses as far as religions go.
Wow.
So, yes. So we had, everywhere you would run into witnesses. There wasn't really getting away from someone who didn't know another witness. Everyone in this town knows each other. And so what I started noticing was certain people, usually with higher privileges or family members of ones with higher privileges, would do something. And again, we were kind of small town at the time, so most people found out so-and-so was doing something bad, and those people never got in trouble. And there was this one specific time frame when an elder's daughter and a non-elder's daughter both did the exact same thing in the exact same congregation, and one got disfellowshipped and one did not. And I remember being like disgusted because the one who didn't get disfellowshipped, she went to them heartfelt, trying to do whatever she could to come back, and pretty much begged the elders to please help me. Like, I need your help. I need your guidance. And they disfellowshipped her. Mm-hmm. And it was actually the father of the other girl who didn't get disfellowshipped who was on her committee and made that decision. And so I went to a couple elders I had known, and I kind of just expressed my, I guess, confusion on why that would happen, because at the time I thought Jehovah helped make those decisions. And pretty much every elder I spoke to said the exact same thing is, you shouldn't be questioning them because this was a decision made. And by you questioning them, you are going against Jehovah. And that was kind of the starting point of me to start questioning every single occurrence in the Kingdom Hall, pretty much. And then the elders, of course, attacked me after I started questioning them. So I saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the biggest thing that for me made me know 100% this is a cult, this is nothing inspired by God, was actually after I got disfellowshipped. I had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer, And the kind of cancer I had, it was one of those where we didn't know until going into surgery if I would be able to live past the surgery, because it was just a different kind of way it would spread. And my sister, my dad told my sister, which I didn't want him to, but she is a Jehovah's Witness. She was then still. And she decided to tell all of these people that I knew that I had cancer. So before I was going into surgery, I was very aware of who specifically knew, and not even the elders reached out to me. And that was kind of the moment for me that I was like, this is nothing to do with God, because if Jesus was here, and I actually said this in my video, but I was like, if Jesus was on this earth today and I was dying of cancer and I was disfellowshipped, I guarantee you he would come support me through that. And that was pretty much when I knew it's not real.
Wow, that's a huge wake-up call. So before I ask any more questions, how is your condition now? Are you doing well?
I am doing good. I'm almost this year I'll be 6 years cancer-free, so it's all good.
That's amazing. That's awesome news.
Thank you.
Really
But no thanks to anyone in the cult.
Absolutely. Well, and so there's something that needs to be, I guess I just want to reiterate this for anyone who either might be a Jehovah's Witness or is on the fence, or someone who knows someone else who's a Jehovah's Witness and just has questions about the cult. I think it's important to realize that when someone is disfellowshipped, as far as I understand from like the Secret Elders Handbook and everything, the elders and your immediate family are supposed to be the ones who are allowed to talk to you. So when a person is disfellowshipped, the elders are supposed to be the ones who are able to call you, are able to text you, see if you're doing all right, see if you need anything, do shepherding calls. That's all supposed to be like standard procedure. So it really goes to show that your disfellowshipping wasn't so much that they wanted you to repent or whatever for 6 months, which is interesting because repentance is a decision that you make straight away. It's not a 6 to 9 months to 12-month thing.
Yeah.
But they should have been able to reach out to you and again do those shepherding calls. So it wasn't about your repentance so much as it feels more like it was something to silence you.
Yes. And it felt that way very much.
Yeah, because you were expressing doubts and you were questioning decisions. Mm-hmm. So the disfellowshipping was just an excuse to sort of get you off to the side and out of the congregation, hopefully not spreading your apostate lies to any other members of the congregation.
Yeah, that was exactly what it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is terrible, and those men should feel terrible. So again, I'm glad to hear that you're doing much better now and that you are cancer-free. That's fantastic news.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think if there was anything else in one of your videos that really struck me. I know the situation with there was an elder who reached out to you via text, and that was an accident. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So this elder was actually a very close family friend. Like his wife was one of my closest friends in the congregation. And I had actually reached out to him during the disfellowshipping process, because when I was disfellowshipped, it was a whole ordeal in itself, but pretty much I had to appeal that. And so he was my go-to elder. And he was, throughout my whole disfellowshipping process, I was in communication with him, even though he wasn't on the committee. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of assumed out of all the elders, he would probably keep in touch with me. And I had not heard from him at all since I had gotten disfellowshipped. And one day I got a text from him, and this was a little bit before my surgery. And he sent off a message that I was like, I knew this was not for me. And at the time I felt obligated to respond and let him know he had sent a text to the wrong person. And then he realized it was me, and he's like, oh, I heard about your situation. Sorry about that. Nothing else. He didn't ask if I needed anything. He didn't follow up with trying to even reach out to my dad. And that was one of the closest families that I had in the congregation. And they didn't even go out of their way to message me.
Wow. Or even to contact members of your family.
Yep. And my dad, he's not disfellowshipped. He pretty much just became inactive and just kind of faded away. So they could have been talking to him throughout the entire process if they didn't feel comfortable to talk to me.
Right. Yeah, and that's what's ironic is the Secret Elders Handbook is called Shepherd the Flock of God book, and they're supposed to be shepherds, and they're supposed to be taking care of the congregation and helping to serve and meet their needs, and they do none of those things. Especially in your situation, it was, again, you were doing the big no-no of questioning the organization, so you had to be gotten rid of by any means necessary. It's kind of how it feels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Wow. Okay. So, how would you say life is different now that you're outside of the organization?
Completely different. I have just actual pure joy and happiness. But I remember one of the first times I could understand how different it was being out in what they call the world, but just in normal life.
Mm-hmm.
Is I remember something had happened, and I don't know, it was like a very tiny little thing. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I am not stressed that this thing just happened to me, that I have to worry about people watching me or telling on me or getting in trouble. And I remember being like, this is the first time in my life that I actually feel free, free to do what I want
Mm-hmm.
and not be judged for it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't think people understand how much this organization permeates every single aspect of your life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from your schooling to your work to how you spend your free time at home. And Monday's getting ready for Tuesday, Tuesday's getting ready for Wednesday. And it's like almost every single day of the week is accounted for, and it has something to do with the organization, which is one of the aspects of a cult. If you're looking at the bite model, is keeping the members so busy that they're too exhausted to think critically about anything that's going on or happening to them. So what are you doing with all your free time now?
I work a lot. I love to work. If it was up to me, I would have gone through college when I was younger. I actually had a fake family member who was willing to pay for me to go to college, and I turned it down because the elders told me to. So if it was up to me, I would do a lot more business-wise. But I love working, and I get to go travel the world, and that's just something I didn't get to do much when I was in the cults. And so for me, that brings me pure joy, and I'm able to do it whenever I want.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I've seen a couple, like you've been to Greece and some other pretty cool places. So, I mean, that's a far away from Oregon. So
Yes.
that's the right state. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So it's pretty cool that you've been able to travel around. Most people, if they want to travel as a Jehovah's Witness, they try and serve where the need is great in the Caribbean.
Yep. Yep.
Like some exotic, nice location down there where they can, again, serve or whatever. It's obviously a vacation for them. So you took the steps you started to wake up, you moved outside of the organization, you have more free time to work and travel now and to live away from this community that's constantly policing you. So how have you managed to form your own community outside of the Jehovah's Witnesses as far as friends and family members?
I'm kind of one of the lucky ones as far as this goes, because although my sister and a couple aunts and uncles are still in the cult, I actually already had a lot of family who had left it before I did. So the majority of my family is actually out. So when that happened, I had that support from day one. And I actually remember when I got disfellowshipped, me and my sister were living together. And so, of course, I couldn't live with her. We were sharing an apartment. And so I moved back in with my dad at the time. And I told him, I'm thinking I'm this horrible human at this time, thinking I committed the biggest sin in the world. And I sit down, I had to tell him I'm disfellowshipped. And I remember I told him the reason, and he just laughed and he smiled and he said, you know what? That's okay. You're better off. And just that amount of support, it may sound very little and meaningless to most people, but having someone be okay with you when you're being shunned
Mhm.
from your entire town, like that was such a huge moment for me to feel okay. And I know not a lot of people get that. So I've been very fortunate in that I had my family from the moment it happened.
Yeah, well, that is pretty amazing. And that was your father that did that?
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, I'm just really glad that it was kind of the perfect storm of circumstances if you think about it, because he was already kind of fading at that point. Is that right?
Yep, he was.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so happy to hear that you had some support like immediately as you were moving out of the organization. And what's really interesting is I always think of, if I just had to like reference a biblical reference, it's like what you meant for evil, God meant for good. So the disfellowshipping was actually like an evil or injustice that was done to you, because you said in several of your videos, and I happen to agree with you, that you won't find the disfellowshipping agreement in the scriptures. It's not something that is, it's the way that the Jehovah's Witnesses go about it. You can't find it in the scriptures anywhere. So that was an injustice that was done to you, but it actually helped contribute to you waking up and having freedom that you have now.
Yeah. And I actually tell people that because I remember, so there were 2 years before I got disfellowshipped that I was fighting to be, I guess, treated okay in the congregation. But at that time, and I don't, I'm not trying to get into spiritual beliefs, but at that time, I still believed in Jehovah and I was praying to him. And I remember my prayer was so specific. And I said this prayer daily. And I pretty much was like, please help show me what is right. What do I need to do right by you? And it was a very specific prayer I said over and over every day for 2 years. And the whole time after I left, I realized this, but the whole time I was like, my prayer was being answered every step of the way. They were trying to kick me out, but I was so stubborn and I didn't realize it. I was fighting to stay in. And the answer was I needed to leave, but I didn't understand that.
Right.
So it really was a blessing.
Absolutely. And you can go as deep into spiritual belief as you want. Again, the channel is called Born Again XJW. So I've totally put my faith in Christ as my savior. I know some people don't like it when people leave the Jehovah's Witnesses and become Christians, but in my opinion, the Watchtower is such a caricature. It's such a cartoon of what Christianity actually is.
Yeah.
It's laughable to me. It's the same as, any of these other false guys who come up with their own man-made religions. It sounds like a 13-year-old boy made it up.
Yeah.
But when you actually understand the truth about who Jesus is, it totally changes everything. So yeah, you can go as deep into spiritual stuff as you want. I have no problems with that. And
Okay.
yeah, people have different. I also know this too about the XJW community is like, each one of us kind of goes a different way. So some people, like, they're spiritually abused. So they're just like, I'm done with religion or anything having to do with God or the Bible or anything outright. So because they're so hurt, they can't open themselves up to that because they feel like so much time has been wasted and so much pain has been dealt. And then you have other people who, find a religious lifestyle or whatever it happens to be. And I don't blame anyone for either of those two choices. Because I myself, when I left, I would say I was just in like this nothing stasis for like 3 to 5 years where I didn't really care. I wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started like reading the Bible on my own that it actually started to make more sense to me. And it was like whole sections of the Bible that I was like, we never even touched this. You know what I mean? Like, do you happen to read the Bible now at all?
I don't now, but I
Shame.
I still believe in the Bible. I think it's still one of those triggers for me where I will read the Bible when I'm trying to prove points on things. But it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was talking about when I said I was in this stasis. It was more like almost like a spiritual purgatory of like I wasn't moving forward or back, or I was unconcerned. I think I was more concerned with my career at that point, and that became my focus. But the reason I asked you if you read the Bible at all is because as I would read it on my own, be like, we've never touched on this I grew up in this organization for like 18 years, and we never even read this verse or chapter or whatever. We always focused on these obscure, weird stories in the Old Testament that they would turn into like this whole big thing. And that's what they would base their convention off of, is, something strange in the book of Daniel or whatever.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a quick question. Did you have any, but before I move into like one of my final questions, did you have any interesting things happen to you at like a assembly, or just something funny that you can think of as like one of your sort of weirdest JW stories?
No, but I do remember during conventions. So our conventions were Portland, which is a big city for our area. But so there's protests all the time in Portland. I mean, now with the news, everyone knows about Portland being like protest central. But
is it still on fire right now?
It's not right now.
Okay,
there's still like, issues, but it's nothing like it was before.
Okay, because it was crazy there.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, there's a lot of people who just go out and do that stuff all the time in Portland. That's not a weird thing. But I remember we had one specific convention in Portland, and there were a bunch of like protesters around our building. And I remember they had these really weird signs. And at the time, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're like evil people. But their signs were, "You're in a cult." And it kept, like, every sign, no matter what they were, it was something cult. And I remember that caught my eye. And so, of course, we go in for the after lunch part of the convention. And I remember being weirded out by this, because I'm like, they had to have changed the program because of these protesters. The whole next talk was about how we are not a cult and how we are actually the true religion. And I just was like, there's no way this was planned. Like they had to scramble at lunch and make this a talk. Yeah. Because I think they realized how strong that word affected members. And so I do remember that being just a weird moment.
That is really interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of a special needs talk at a convention. So that is hilarious.
It was weird. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Well, yeah, that's one of the things when you go on jw.org, they have this free questions page. And one of them is Jehovah's Witnesses a cult. And I guess the meme I would make for that would be like, tell me you're in a cult without telling me you're in a cult. Yeah. And it was, do you have a frequently asked question? Are you a cult? So, yeah, it is a heavy word. It has a lot of impact, and a lot of people, I've even noticed like activists who don't like to use that word, but I switch back and forth between high control group and cult, because a lot of people, when they hear the word cult, they think of like, is it Jim Jordan, the one who had everyone drink the Kool-Aid or whatever?
Oh, maybe. Yeah. I don't know his name, but I probably. Yeah.
So that's what everyone thinks of. But they just don't realize that this can happen in work environments, can be a high control group or a cult. I mean, it's like almost every institution on the planet can have these narcissistic qualities. And the Jehovah's Witnesses, I mean, they take the cake on almost every single category that you can possibly think of that a high control group would act like. And they're manifest in that. So I guess my next question to you would be like, so you've woken up, you have this better life, but a lot of people are just fine with that. Like they're okay with just living their life and being good. What pushed you into activism? Because that's a very brave step to put yourself out there and talk about coming from a deception into finding freedom.
Okay, so I feel like my reasoning was a little bit petty, to be honest, how it started. I wasn't at this time planning on making my TikTok something about Jehovah's Witnesses. Like that was not my intention. And I had done like one short little like funny video on TikTok, and I had put in there something like, when members from the XJW cults tell me to stop talking about them, or something like that. Because I had posted one thing before that, and someone had sent me a message saying, don't say that. So I posted this little funny thing, just thinking I was being funny and like making a jab. And a witness who happens to be one of my sister's best friends messages me a comment on there telling me how I'm lying, how no one's ever reached out to me to say that. And I was at a concert when I saw the message. So me and my friend, who is obviously not a Jehovah's Witness, were looking at it. And I was like, I have to respond to this. And she's like, just wait till the concert's over. Don't let it bother you. Like, wait till you get home. So I get home and I go to open it up to respond to her, and she had deleted the comment. So this, again, very petty, but I was like, how dare you? Like, first off, you don't know me anymore. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what the witnesses have done to me. How dare you come onto my page to tell me I'm wrong when you couldn't reach out to me when I had cancer? Like, how dare you? And it started from that. So it was kind of my own form of revenge. And then I got really good response from it. And I was like, hey, maybe I need to share more of this because I think other people can relate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, regardless if that was the start or not, I mean, the fact that you decided to keep going with it and to sort of reach back and pull other people forward with you and key them in on some of the things that you had noticed growing up as Jehovah's Witness. Like you were just saying, some of the discrepancies between children who were the children of elders or children who were just members of the congregation, you know, that sort of, I guess you could say, misfair treatment of someone who wasn't in a privileged household. So I appreciate you pointing out those types of things, because I don't think, again, any institution is going to have a completely clean slate or perfect record, but I really hate how Jehovah's Witnesses use that term imperfect person to they use it like a shield to blanket over every single.
Yeah.
I guess there's a difference between a mistake and willfully doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the organization is really good at doing things that are willfully wrong and then trying to say, oh, well, that was just a mistake. You know, like they messed up on a math problem or something.
Yes.
So
and it's serious things that they say that about.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Like the blood doctrine or disfellowshipping or things that really do affect people. Interesting. Okay. So what would you say, and again, if we don't want to go here, we don't have to, but what would you say about, like, what would you consider your faith to be now?
Okay, so this is going to sound a little weird because I do still believe in the Bible, but I'm Native American, and my dad actually, part of his growing up was with his grandpa who was on a reservation. So my dad has held near and dear the beliefs and understanding and teachings of, you know, being a Native person. And when we were growing up, he really pushed that aside because we were supposed to be Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I remember things here and there that he would tell us, teach us, show us, whatever, but we never really got into the spirituality of it. Mm-hmm. But once I got disfellowshipped, and I mean, I remember feeling this way before I got disfellowshipped, but I fully acknowledged after I got disfellowshipped, I completely agreed with everything he'd ever said. Like, I felt it in my heart this whole time. I just never understood what I was feeling, just because the cult was so powerful at kind of making me put those thoughts aside. So when I was able to fully think about things and see where my heart was, I went to him and we kind of had a little conversation. And I was like, I think this is actually what I've believed my whole life. And he had told my sister this too, that this is what he believed. And she told him to never talk to her about it again. And so for me, it's really weird because I know some witnesses react to it very weird to have anything to do with Native American belief and culture. But to me, it's just always been a part of me. I just never understood how or why it was. So I do believe in the Bible, but I have a very strong pull towards those kind of beliefs. And so I don't know, sometimes I sound weird when I talk about it because I'll go back and forth, but I've kind of put God and, you know, Mother Earth or the universe together as the same thing.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, the reason I ask is because, obviously, like when you grow up in the organization, we call it the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's part of the indoctrination, is we're all walking around to each other saying, "Oh, you're in the truth, you're in the truth," and we're all like repeating this weird little line, that's just conditioning us into believing that this organization is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, Jesus, when he was on the earth, he took that title upon himself. He said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So I always just think, when I'm having discussions about faith or spirituality or religion or anything like that, if you feel like you are touching truth, or if you have the truth, then you should have no problem having discussions with people of other faiths and hashing that out, or even just discussing what their beliefs are and your beliefs, and how do we ground that in reality? Do we have any evidence for our beliefs? But that's the biggest difference between the faith that I have now and what I had growing up as Jehovah's Witnesses. There was no room to have any discussion about anything.
Yeah.
If you didn't subscribe to my way of thinking, then you were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we'll figure that out at Armageddon. And it was almost like this. It's not like I wished that on anyone, but it was almost like I wanted to be right so much that I was just like, all right, well, at Armageddon, you're dead. It was like this. It was this very weird. I don't want to say psychotic. What's the term? It's just like you don't want to care about the other person.
Yeah. You pretty much write them off because you think they're going to die anyways.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. Excellent. Okay. Well, is there anything that you would like to say to, like, if someone is watching this and they're a Jehovah's Witness or on the fence, or they're having doubts or questions about the organization, what advice would you give them? Just what would be your advice?
I mean, I think for different people, it has to be a different way of going about it. But if you truly are questioning something, or you've heard something that you just really feel the need to have an answer to, this is what I feel about it. I feel if you're going to get disfellowshipped over that and researching that, you're probably not in the right religion. Because if they're going to disfellowship you for trying to prove to yourself that that religion is true, they're hiding something. So if you're afraid to research, maybe you need to research because there's something they don't want you to see. That's the only reason why. And if you're afraid to do it from, apostates, maybe don't watch our videos, maybe don't do that, but maybe go to Google and look up court documents. Maybe go to the United Nations website and look up the relationship with the Jehovah's Witnesses. If you don't feel comfortable to even reach out to apostates, do your research. Like, I don't care where it is or how you do it. If you need to go to a worldly friend and have them do the research and bring it to you, do that, because I think it's important that you answer your questions for yourself.
That's really solid advice. I think probably my favorite thing you said, if I could summarize it in a different way, is like, if you're in the truth, then it should stand up to any scrutiny you can present to it. So any test you can do against that truth, it should be able to win 100% of the time. And if you're not able to question it, there's your first red flag.
Yeah.
So that's really, really good advice. And I like how it's interesting that people would trust almost like a secular source, like the UN or the court documents or something like that, almost more than they would trust someone who was formerly religious or formerly shared the same religion, just because that person has been so demonized to the point of, and apostate's almost worse than Satan sometimes.
Yeah.
In the minds of the JWs. So actually, one final question, if you have time.
Yeah.
Have you been, because I know if you're in the XJW community and you start uploading stuff to YouTube, it starts throwing out more and more content that's from the XJW community. So have you been watching any of the material on like the recent broadcasts where they're talking about staying away from apostate websites and not having any communication with them? Have you seen any of that stuff?
Yes. And to me, it feels like they are really doing everything they can to avoid their followers from seeing any of this. Like it's almost like a marketing campaign or something against us.
Yeah. So how do you feel when you hear David Splain say things like, if you drink a little bit of poison and you think it's okay to drink poison because you're so big and strong, that's the same as going and talking with apostates. You think that you're going to go and like change or help that person, and you're so spiritually strong that you can go and do that. How do you feel when Jehovah's Witnesses come and comment on your videos when they're technically not supposed to be there?
I feel a couple of ways, but one thing I always do think, and I'll tell them this, is that clearly you as a Jehovah's Witness, you don't even think it's the truth, because otherwise you would not be on my page talking to me. If you knew that was true and you could get in trouble by Jehovah and never wake up again because you decided to reach out to me, you would not be doing it. So I feel like it's almost just more, I guess, confirmation that it's not the truth. Like there's no reason for them to be doing it if they believe that.
Right, exactly. And that is a question that I'll often ask them instead of addressing any of their crazy claims, because they'll come in and they'll be like, well, what about this, and they'll like send you 17 things, like you're supposed to, systematically address each point they make, which none of it makes any sense most of the time. But that is really one of those examples of actions speak louder than words, and your actions say that you don't think that these guys are the channel for Jehovah. I pronounce it wrong on purpose. But their authority is telling you not to go anywhere near these websites, and here you are trying to debate when you've been told very explicitly on multiple occasions not to be here.
Yeah.
So I try and ask them, what is their justification for that? How do they square that circle?
Have you gotten any good answers from that?
No, most of the time I'm being told I'm serving Satan, or I'm a goat, or a couple other colorful explanations, or I guess you could say adjectives that are applied to me, but none of it really bothers me, because again, I'm trying to reach back and pull people out of a deception that I grew up in, and unfortunately, my entire side of the family is all still in. But my wife's side of the family, they never were Jehovah's Witnesses, so I'm very fortunate in that way. But yeah, I get a lot of colorful expressions painted on me.
Oh, yeah, that's hard.
All right, well, this has been fantastic. I have taken up 45 minutes of your time, so I just wanted to ask if you had any final thoughts or conclusions that you would like to add.
I mean, honestly, I think every single person who has left the cult needs to speak out, even if it's not the way you and I are doing it. Like, I think it's so important to start making this a normal conversation, because I think part of what Jehovah's Witnesses have going for them is that no one really knows about them. They don't really know what they do or what they believe. And so
100%.
so most of the scrutiny comes from the ex-Jehovah Witnesses. But if we can start making this, between all of us who have left, a normal conversation, like some people, actually, the majority of witnesses automatically, when they defend their pedophile stuff, they automatically go, oh, well, Catholics, they're known for that. And how normal of a conversation that is. We need to start making that normal for Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think if we all do that, if we can all collectively start normalizing this conversation, I think we'll have such a huge impact. And Jehovah's Witnesses can't hide from us. We have a voice, so we should use it. And I think if we all just try it a little bit, it can make a huge difference.
Yes, that is beautiful advice. I love bringing this up more often and sort of, again, changing people's perceptions of, like, I guess you could say the higher ups are who I have the problem with. The rank and file Jehovah's Witnesses, you've had a lot more venomous experiences. I actually had a really party, happy-go-lucky congregation, so I can't say anything bad about them. It's probably because we grew up in Florida. A lot of sunshine. People were just happy and wanted to get out on the beach. But yeah, most people would say, oh yeah, they show up on Saturdays. They're kind of annoying. They don't celebrate birthdays. They don't pledge to the flag, but they don't realize the other stuff, the blood transfusions, the shunning, the pedophiles, the murder suicides. I mean, it's like, you're right. The Catholic Church is always the big punching bag, and everyone's used to making those jokes. But if we can normalize it a little bit more, that's some super solid advice for someone who doesn't want to start a YouTube channel but still wants to somehow do activism. So that's amazing. So Mariah, real quick, how can people find you? Where can they find you on social media so they can support you?
So right now I just am doing TikTok and YouTube, and it is just probably the worst username I could have ever picked, but it is Raya__V. And if you just look me up, I have a lot of other ex-witnesses that I follow, or who, are following me. So if you're looking for other really good people to follow, maybe just get more information or find good sources, TikTok is probably going to be the best way to do that. But my YouTube channel, I feel like it's just better conversation.
Okay, excellent. Well, yeah, guys, if you get the opportunity, go and support Mariah on her YouTube and her TikTok. If you're brave enough to go there, it's a weird place. But I encourage you to go and support her by subscribing and, giving her a like, and also just, feed the algorithm by giving some comments in the comment section. So I really do hope that you guys take us up on that challenge. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this entire video. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and God bless.
Truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God.